We're going to get a chance to hear from Simon Dixon, who is from Hong Kong, and he has, you ready for this name? Bank to the Future. Is that cool or what? And he is going to talk to us today about a very important issue. It's hot, it's very relevant, and it's something that can help you make money. It's called scalability. And he's going to talk about the scalability of blockchain, Bitcoin, and more. Right now, I want you to join me in welcoming Simon Dixon.
Okay, cheers. Hello, can you all hear me good? Excellent. Okay, so I'm delighted to be here in Mexico. I have to say, I spoke at the very first Bitcoin conference in the world in Prague. And over the years, I've seen this grow from 20 to 40 people that were at that conference to the hundreds and now thousands. And over the last year, I've definitely seen a switch towards so many different people getting involved in this industry, whether it be traditional finance people, investors, banks, financial institutions, and the conferences have certainly changed over the years. But when I came here today and when I experienced the speakers and the audience, it actually reminded me of exactly what it used to be like in 2011, 2012. And it reminded me of the people that actually created this industry and the original visions that these people had. And it really took me back today. So I just want to thank everybody for being a part of that and remembering what this all was about and where this all came from. So I just want to say that at first. I also want to give a quick shout out to Kevin's barber here in Acapulco that put this thing on my head. I couldn't resist. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Simon Dixon. I left investment banking in 2006. Before that, I studied economics up at master's level, and after 3 years of scalping money out of the markets and doing IPOs, I decided that there was something more fulfilling in life to do, and I left in 2006. And I returned to my thoughts in economics. I believe economics has been built upon completely incorrect assumptions about how banks work. They taught me that banks were an intermediary between borrower and lender. Firstly, that is just completely incorrect. And secondly, when you go a bit further, you learn about this thing called fractional reserve banking and money being based upon debt, and that is completely incorrect as well. Fractional reserve banking does not exist. There is no fraction and there is no reserve. They simply create as much money as people are willing to borrow in line with their business model. And so in 2011, when I wrote this book called Bank to the Future. And the goal of this book was to create a really clear, easy to understand perspective on the future of finance and understanding money with no understanding of economics, no understanding of finance, speaking to people so that they could try to understand. Now the problem with that is I spoke about this as far and as wide as I could speak, but nobody was interested in the subject. Then came Bitcoin. A gentleman, an anarchist called Amir Taki, invited me to the first Bitcoin conference in the world. He could only put together about 40 people in a room that were interested in the topic. About 20 of them were computer scientists that could not communicate a message, but they were complete geniuses. And the other 20 people were anarchists that could not communicate a message, but were complete geniuses. And they asked me to come along and talk about the difference between Bitcoin and banking. And so I found 3 differences, and I'm going to give this same talk, those 3 differences right now, summarized, and then I'm going to give a talk about the most important issue surrounding cryptocurrencies, and that is scaling. When I say scaling, that sounds like a really geeky subject, but let's actually think about what this is. Every single person in the entire world needs to understand and use cryptocurrencies, and they will over the next 5 to 10 years. And we need to scale in order to cater for those people. And I'm not going to be talking about big blocks versus small blocks and geeky things and stuff like that. I'm going to be talking, the other speakers can do a great job of that. I'm a finance guy that jumped into technology, not a technology guy that jumped into finance. And I'm going to talk about some of the real issues that are going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years as cryptocurrency touches every single person in the planet. And that's what I talk about when I talk about scaling. We'll leave the other speakers to talk about some of the more technical issues and how we get there. But I talked about 3 differences between Bitcoin and banking, and this is a simple thing you need to know. There are 3 things, if you're completely new to this topic right now, and why it is the most important technological innovation since the internet, and it's as follows. When you deposit your money at a bank, the bank becomes the legal owner of that money. They promise to give it to you back. They probably will give it to you back. But if they do wrong things with that money, you will soon realize that it's not yours. If you do something that the bank or the government disagrees with that money, then you will soon realize it's not yours and you can't move it. If you travel to the wrong country and the government doesn't like where you're traveling to, you will soon realize that that money is not yours. The second it gets paid into a bank, it is no longer your money. Bitcoin created the first scarce digital asset that you can own. It's 100% yours. It's digital cash, and you own it. It exists in your pocket. It exists on your phone. It exists on your hard drive. It exists, and that comes with responsibilities. Owning your own money means that you need to learn how to secure your own money, and it comes with personal responsibility. That's a challenge for many, and a challenge we need to scale to as more and more people touch this. But with Bitcoin, it's money that you own. With banking, you do not own that money. In fact, banks were the inventors of digital currency. Banks they in fact invented the money that is in your bank is a digital representation of the currency that people think the government created. And it's all digital. Anything in a bank, if you have money in a bank, every single penny in a bank, it can be swapped for money that the government created at an ATM, but it is a digital currency. And the only way that it exists is if somebody else borrows it. Forget about fractional reserve, that doesn't exist. If somebody borrows that money, it creates a brand new digital currency, a version of the currency that you thought the government created, and you have to have, someone else has to have a negative balance if you've got a positive balance. If your online banking is above the 0, somebody else is below the 0. And that's it. That's how this digital currency called digital fiat or digital pounds or digital dollars is created. It's all backed by debt, and the banks get the profit from that money. The second thing that you need to understand is that because banks own the money and they're the legal owner of everything that you hold in a bank account, they can spend it as they wish. And what they do is they spend it in line with their business model. And their business model says as follows: we need to take that money and we need to invest it in the highest return, lowest risk asset class. And the highest return, lowest risk asset class for a bank is always real estate and property. So all of your money is spent on somebody else being able to perpetuate the system whereby someone takes out a mortgage that creates new digital currency, and that drives the real estate market, and that's why property prices always go up and people can't afford property anymore, because your money is perpetuating new digital currency, and that digital currency is lent in mortgages because it's the least risky and highest return asset class for banks. And so property prices continually go up, so people take on more mortgages in order to get ahead, so that some of the money that they're earning ends up going into the property, so that they're not taking all their income and spending it on rent and trying to get on the property ladder, okay? With Bitcoin, it's completely different in terms of you spend it. Because you own it, it's in your pocket, you send it to someone else, and if somebody else wants that money and you agree in a mutually consenting way, or they steal it, not necessarily mutually consenting way, then you can transfer it from person to person. How you want to spend it, Bitcoin doesn't care. What you want to spend it on, Bitcoin doesn't care. Your sexual preference, Bitcoin doesn't care. The country you go to, Bitcoin doesn't care. Whoever, if you have identity documents, Bitcoin does not care. It's just simply person to person, transfer to transfer. In summary, you put your money in a bank, the bank owns that money. With Bitcoin, you own that money. When the banks own that money, they spend it as they wish. When you own it, you decide where you spend it is censorship resistant, and there is no one in the middle that can decide how you spend it. The third thing is what's made everyone crazy. The third reason is that it is actually become, and this is why the scaling debate persists, is because of its monetary policy. The monetary policy of traditional fiat money is that they try and take the goals of a national country and they try and figure out how to maximize employment, stability, growth, all those things. Or if you're an anarchist, they try to maximize corruption using that currency. Take your pick, I'm not judging it. But the point is that the monetary policy is dictated by the goals of a specific set of artificial borders that the government created. With Bitcoin, there is no borders. The monetary policy just said something very simple. We're going to have 21 million of these things, and there will never be any more. And every 10 minutes, new Bitcoins get created for people that actually verify the network. And every 4 years, the number of Bitcoins that get created every 10 minutes are going to halve until eventually there is no more Bitcoins to be created. We now have 17 million of these things approximately. There's only ever going to be 21 million of them. And because it is a scarce thing, everybody needs to try and compete with those to get those Bitcoins. And because they're all competing to get those Bitcoins, everybody needs this thing, and everybody's got different reasons for wanting it. Some people want censorship-resistant money. Some people want a really easy way of transferring money globally. Some people want to be able to make tiny, tiny payments and not pay high transaction fees. Some people want to actually use it as an asset class that's uncorrelated to the stock markets, the bond markets, the property markets. But over the next 5 to 10 years, every single person in the world is going to need their fraction of these 21 million Bitcoins at some point, at some level. And everyone's going to be touched upon that. Now, the people that, and so therefore, because there's only going to be 21 million of them, it encourages savings, because if this thing becomes more useful over time, people don't want to spend it. People want to spend shit money that goes down in value, that's inflated away. People want to... People want to save money that they believe is going to be worth more in the future, and therefore you have lots of people that are using Bitcoin as a savings account. You've got fund managers that are now using it as an uncorrelated asset class. You've got people that are all around the world that are using it for completely different things, okay? And this is the crux of the scaling debate and some of the issues that I'd like to discuss today. Some people are very upset that the more popular Bitcoin gets under the economics of today, the more expensive Bitcoin will get to use. And because of that, it becomes more and more expensive, and therefore the transactions for the smaller transactions and the billions of people that are unbanked that we wanted to bring in can no longer use Bitcoin. I was originally a Bitcoin maximalist. In 2017, I come to realize that we are all part of the same thing here. We are all part, this entire crypto sector is become stronger and stronger as a result of all the innovation that's happening around it. Because here's the thing, I used to think that Bitcoin could be everyone to everything. But Bitcoin cannot be everyone to everything. But there is one thing that I believe it needs to do incredibly well, and it's the only one that I believe will do this, is that it needs to be the decentralized store of value, world reserve cryptocurrency of cryptocurrencies, and eventually the world reserve cryptocurrency of traditional currencies. And here's why I believe that's important. Thank you. Yeah. Later today, you're going to hear from Roger Ver and other people and other great thinkers. Roger Ver was there before that I was there in 2011 when I went to that first conference. Roger Ver and myself have certain disagreements, but I have complete respect for him for bringing forward what he believes is right for Bitcoin. I do not question his intentions, even though a lot of people do question intentions. And Roger, at the same time, I believe that the Bitcoin core developers, the people that are bringing it, are working to a certain goal that may not be in line with your goal as well, but I do not question their intentions, even though some people do. I choose to believe, and you take which one you want, that actually people are just working around this technology and trying to figure out what they think is right for this technology. Now, here's the thing that I believe, and this brings to some of the key scaling debates. Digital cash versus digital gold. I believe that there will never, ever in my lifetime be another digital gold. And the reason that Bitcoin can perform the role of digital gold is as follows. Because it was created by a group of people that nobody knew who they were. If you launch a cryptocurrency today, you have to leverage somebody's reputation, brand, and that person becomes the central point of failure for that cryptocurrency. Because with Ethereum, you have to look at Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation. Ethereum wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation and all the others. Anyone that creates a cryptocurrency today has to leverage their brand and reputation, and they become the person that can have excessive influence over that. Now, you might say to me right now, Bitcoin has problems with centralization. Here's the thing, Bitcoin does have problem with centralization. It is also the most decentralized thing we have without a doubt. I'll tell you why. For the last 3 years, everybody has tried to control Bitcoin. The miners that were more centralized around the geographical location of China all tried to get their way and maximize Bitcoin for their own personal gain. The businesses did the same. They all colluded to get together at one of the conferences last year and determine what they thought was right for their business. The developers all get together and they decide what they want, and there is some kind of decentralization to it, but there's no doubt that one company does employ some of the most influential developers behind Bitcoin and can probably have some kind of say in the future of Bitcoin. There is centralization in mining. There is centralization in development. There is centralization in the business community. But guess what? For 3 frickin' years, we were all debating and none of them got their way. None of them got their way. Because Bitcoin has created the perfect incentive mechanism of self-interested people all competing to try and get their way, but none of them can get it. None of them can get it. It's the most decentralized thing we have. Tell me any other cryptocurrency where the miners can't get their way, the developers can't get their way, the foundation can't get their way, every single one of them. But here's the thing, centralization is useful in some circumstances. Centralization allows you to achieve different goals, but it will not allow you to achieve digital gold. And that's why I believe Bitcoin, no matter what, has to stick to that thing of becoming digital gold, and everything else can compete around it to fulfill the different user cases. Never break Bitcoin. Never try to do something fast. Adopt the most conservative strategy possible. This is far too important to far too many people. And that's why I believe that digital gold and the conservative strategy is the right approach. However, if someone can come along and take the code of Bitcoin and create their own version and then come along and say, let's increase the blocks, let's make it cheaper, and they want to fulfill the goal of trying to become digital cash, then go do it. I've got no problem with that. And people should not demonize and slag people off for trying to fulfill that goal. Bitcoin can become digital cash. It might become digital cash. They can have Bitcoin Cash. You can have Dash working on its goals. You can have Ethereum trying to become cash through some kind of smart contract, weird platform, whatever it might be. But it's all interoperable, and it all needs to be traded and exchanged with the one thing that acts as digital gold, which is Bitcoin. Okay? Now, in my final 10 minutes before Jose comes up, I just want to give you some thoughts on some of these critical debates that are coming up. I personally do not believe that it's going to be very hard to retrieve digital cash for one reason and one reason only. How many of you own Bitcoin? How many of you made a major spending decision over the last month or two, like buying a house or something major? That house cost you half or 60% more as a result of volatility. Good cash is not volatile. This may be a very unpopular thing to say, but government central planning around what they think is the right goal for the country, whether you agree or disagree, has a better chance of achieving stable cash because it's focused on one country rather than the entire world. There is no such thing as global economics, global money supply that works for every single country. I have not seen that yet. IMF are trying with their special drawing rights. Bitcoin is creating something that can be used by everybody. But here's the thing, if you're buying a house and it costs you 60% less based upon some kind of speculative frenzy that happened in 2017, that's not going to be very good cash for you. It is good cash for you if you've earned significant wealth in it, but the reason that the US dollar-backed cryptocurrency Tether during that crash went from 1.5 billion market cap to 2.2 billion market cap is because no one wanted fiat, but they all wanted the stability of fiat in that volatile moment so that they could get back into Bitcoin when they wanted to. And unfortunately, here's the cold, hard reality today. Every single person in this room, whether you know it or not, you are all a speculator. If you hold your money in cash, you're speculating on that paper. If you hold your money at a bank, you're speculating on the credit risk of that financial system, the systemic risk of the financial system, and the credit risk of that individual bank. If you hold your money on real estate, you're speculating on banks and governments always colluding to keep the price of property up. If you hold your money in Bitcoin, you're speculating that the world is going to want an exit from the traditional financial system and that a competing currency that has no government agenda, no central bank control, is actually going to be a useful thing in the future, and that's why I choose to hold it, because it's a hedge against the shit system. Every single central bank in the world right now has a blockchain innovation department that's taking their fiat currency and putting it on a blockchain. You know what's funny? None of the fucking things are blockchains. None of them are blockchains. All they are doing is they're taking, and this is where it gets beautiful, this is the irony of the situation. What they are doing with these blockchains, what they're calling blockchains, is it's actually central banks waging war on retail banks. Remember I said retail banks were the creators of digital currency. They create all that money as debt. Central banks are coming along and saying, we're going to create our own digital currency. Guess what? That's not backed by debt. No debt. No bank needed to issue a loan for that cryptocurrency to exist. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because there's systemic risk in the financial system. The next time the financial system collapses, which it will, the next time they're going to need something they can't bail out. The people aren't going to accept another bailout. It's just not going to happen. They'll have people burning down the buildings. It's not going to happen. The bailout is over. They could bail in, but then that's the end of traditional banks as they know it and the type of Bitcoinization and cryptocurrencyization of the world, because now for the first time, the financial system competes. If they do fucked up things with your money, that money's all going over here really fast, really quickly. That's what they're scared about. This keeps governments more honest. This keeps the financial system more honest. Now they have genuine competition. People can choose. And guess what? That's going to create better fiat money. Because that fiat money is now going to be put on a blockchain, or what they call a blockchain, And next time the traditional financial system collapses, the central bank's going to say, download our app. If you had money with JP Morgan or Chase or Wells Fargo, it's gone. But if you download this app, you can exchange the bank deposit that you had there for this one at the central bank. And then they're going to allow people, but guess what? I actually prefer money at a bank than money at a central bank. When I wrote my first book, Bank to the Future, I thought that central banks might be able to do things better than retail banks, but that's one step removed. When central banks do it and you cross the border and you come to the wrong country or you buy a ticket for the wrong conference, they're going to switch off your bank account. When they believe that you owe them tax, they're going to automate tax collection without due process, and you're going to have to figure out how you get that tax back and prove to them that you didn't own it. Because central banks, as the financial system collapses, the systemic risk, all of that debt-based money is going to be exchanged for central bank money. And guess what else central banks want to do? Cash illegal. What they did in India, that's coming to America, that's coming to everywhere. Every country in the world will make cash illegal. All of this is 100% bullish around how many people are going to want those 21 million Bitcoins and all of the other cryptocurrencies that might come from it. And we have to get used to that we live in a speculative world. Everyone is speculating, and you're either going to get swallowed up or you're going to learn how to get on board. And that's why I'm grateful for the people that are here today and the education that's going to come from this. I'm not going to cover the final thing, utility tokens versus security tokens. I'm giving a talk at about 7 o'clock at the ICO extravaganza. I'll divert that for the second talk. The final thing that's a trend that you need to understand, I'm actually an investor in many of the centralized crypto exchanges, Bitfinex, Bitstamp, Kraken, many of these exchanges. But the next wave that they're all investing in is that the cold hard reality is that we are going to have a two-tiered market. There is a market for people that want to buy Bitcoin at an exchange with fiat money, upload their KYC, fund managers all around the world, the traditional financial system. The funny thing is that they all need Bitcoin. They all need an uncorrelated asset class, so if they believe in it or not, the banks completely scammed themselves the day that they started promoting blockchain defensively to try and eliminate Bitcoin. They started promoting blockchain, and that was the day that Bitcoin went through the freaking roof. Banks have completely promoted this sector. They are completely why we are where we are, because they tried to take over the name Bitcoin and call it blockchain. And guess what? None of that blockchain helps them for shit. They're not creating anything. They're creating centralized databases, and we have this competing system. And then you're going to need decentralized exchanges to compete with these centralized exchanges. It's all going to come together. There's going to be people that can choose now to own their own money, spend their own money, and have an exit from traditional finance. And 2017 was really the year that every entire human on the planet, at the very least, learned about the word Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. 2018 is going to be seriously exciting. 2020 Bitcoin halving. And at the end of the day, today is the most exciting time to be alive in financial history. Thank you. Thank you.